And now on the line is Patricia Sharkey from the Gweebarra Conservation Group. Patricia, welcome to the programme.
Thank you for inviting me on. I love Dublin, went to college there, and I lived in Dublin for a long time, so I know the city pretty well.
Okay, that's cool. Patricia, I saw a very good report and discussion on shock law and TG Carr earlier on the week about what is planned in Gweebarra, and that is the main reason we're doing this interview today on Near FM. Before we talk about that though, could you give me a bit of a summary of the history of your group and the kind of work you have been involved with over the years?
Well, the Gweebarra Conservation Group was founded back in 1999. When aquaculture was proposed for the Gweebarra. And like aquaculture all over the Irish coast, the oysters would be Pacific oysters. They're growing Pacific oysters in the Atlantic, which of course is ecocide because it damages our native oysters, which are smaller. They grow the Pacific oysters because they're bigger. It's more money, and that's what the French like to eat. So we started way back then in 1999, and all the time that the group has been in existence, we've been monitoring and photographing unrecorded archaeology and all of the good stories. You know, we were, prior to this latest assault on our community, we were looking at getting dark sky status because the starry nights here are absolutely amazing. We attended the European Dark Sky Symposia down in Ballycoy in County Mayo, and so there's a lot of positive things the group has been doing. But after the aquaculture, then we had an assault of pylons, and everybody in Dublin will know that the only place you see high voltage power lines is in the suburbs like Finglas and Tala. They can underground lines throughout Dublin city centre, high voltage power lines. This was only 150 kV, but we fought it for 10 years because we knew, or 110 kV rather, because we knew that it was all foreshadowing of wind farms and to facilitate wind farms and nothing about the power supply in Donegal. Then we had, it's only 8 years since we had 3 weeks of oral hearings in an hotel here in Glenties over a previous wind farm application in the same place virtually. So in the last 10 years, we've had 50 wind farm planning applications within a 20-kilometre zone. And first of all, wind farm planners, they're at this a long time. They put in a planning application, they wait to see who objects, they get the objections, and then they withdraw their planning application and go away and write it up to put down whatever the objectors have said and try and dismiss that. There's a whole pattern, a whole methodology. But as social media has been developing in those intervening 10 years, it means that I now know what's going on with the group in Clare, and they know what's going on in Donegal, and we'll soon know what's going on in Dublin Bay, because what they have planned for the East Coast is even more horrendous than what has been planned and worked on inshore to date. And I expect a lot more people in Dublin will be opposing those when they find out the true extent of the environmental pollution that these wind farms represent. So that's, to cut a long story short, that's a brief outline of the Gweebarra Group, Darren.
Okay, yeah, we talk more about the wind farm proposal now in a couple of minutes. Just a couple of questions about Gweebarra. I know Gweebarra is a rural area. Could you tell our listeners, for those who don't know, where exactly in Donegal is Gweebarra?
Yeah, Gweebarra is between Dunlow and Glenties.
Okay.
So it's in southwest Donegal. The Gweebarra is a 32-kilometre long river, and with just one village in the middle, Doohery village, very small, with one pub and one shop and one chapel. And then the river widens then for the last 10 miles. It starts to go out into the bay, and there's a beautiful big beach at Doohy. We can see Glen Bay National Park from where I'm sitting now. So it's a big, long rift valley that goes, as I said, from the coast right up into the mountains within Glen Bay National Park. up above Lough Beara, that's where the Gweebarra River rises. And there's only 20-odd salmon rivers left in Ireland, and this is one of them. And the Atlantic salmon is essential for the survival of the Irish coast. Okay. It's one of our primary species. But it's a lot of bog land here. Bog as far as the eye can see. And then there are a few Gaeltacht forestry Sitka spruce plantations that should never have been constructed or built or planted, because when you dig into the bog, you're releasing more CO2 than trees or turbines could ever offset in hundreds of years. It's absolutely ridiculous. And whilst they may not have known that 40 years ago in the Forestry Service, they sure know it now. And so these areas, like along Gweebarra, along the river, they would never be allowed to plant there again. And so now they want to plant turbines. And a company that like Gaeltacht that got millions and millions from the European Union to plant trees now wants to plant turbines. But it means that they'll be evicting people from their homes, basically. I mean, I got a map in the door. It was all wet, so I had to kind of dry it out. It was some kind of brochure the one company was putting out. And when I dried it out, there was my house with a square, red line square around it, and me to be surrounded by turbines. And I'm just one person, you know. But we've literally been redlined. So somebody is sitting in an office in Dublin. Okay, Kerry for tourism, Donegal for turbines, Leitrim for trees. You know, people who have absolutely no clue about these places. But Ghaeltacht Láir, this is the central Gaeltacht of Donegal. This is where President Robinson came to learn their Irish. Tashi and Shan Gaeilge, August and Crua Gaeilge. And they want to wipe out this Gaeltacht, because this isn't the only wind farm planning application here. There's one miles away or 3 miles away for so many turbines. That's in the Gaeltacht as well. And they want to get rid of the Gaeltacht so that they can dig. It's all about shovel economics. Everything the government comes up with involves shovels and JCBs. Every single plan. And that's what they're at.
Just another quick question about Gweebarra. You mentioned that you're in the Ghaeltacht Láir. I've never been in that part of Donegal before, but I know northwest Donegal, the Ghaeltacht area, fairly well over the years. Is Gweebarra a majority Irish-speaking area, Patricia, or is it not quite as strong as that?
Well, the Ghaeltacht Láir would encompass from coming down near Cloughan, all the way up, Gluery, Fintown, Glenties and Gweebarra. And traditionally, well, it's quite strong speaking still. Like, there wouldn't be many people that couldn't speak Irish. And in fact, like, because it's sort of sparsely populated here, people don't get out as much. They don't see people as much as they might in Gweedore or that. But no, it's a very strong Gaeltacht. Like in some Gaeltachts, you will hear bits of English spoke, but you won't hear them here. You never hear English words in Ghaeltacht Láir.
Are you near Teelan?
No, that's way down in the south coast, near between Donegal Town and Killybegs.
Okay, no.
Like that's the way down beyond Killybegs if you're going to Slieve League. But if you go 2 or 3 bays, you'll see Gweebarra, south of Dublin, and maybe you see Port New on there. It's a big beach there. Gweebarra is a big estuary that comes in then and narrows up the mountain, up in Dublin Bay National Park. It's a glacial rift valley, and it would be part of the same Caledonian rift that you get in Scotland.
Okay.
It's very rural.
Okay. You mentioned there you have trouble with Gaeltacht over the years as well. I was going to ask you about that. I think you've already told us about that. Do you want to tell our listeners any more about the trouble you had with Gaeltacht over the years?
Well, I would rather tell them about this. Well, the fact that Gaeltacht don't practice local people whatsoever, but they know, we've told them repeatedly over the last 20 years that they should be hand felling the Sitka strips that are immediately beside the river on one side and planting native trees. Every town land here is named from trees. Derry Lawn, Claharahor, Claharahullion, from the holly. So it was a very wooded area in ancient times, and there's still a lot of native woods around here. But the thing about this now is last year, December of 2019, we started to notice strange people parked along our road. These roads would only maybe have 2 or 3 cars a day, you know, some of them. And these people were parked up near various people's houses in darkness and daylight. And we asked them who they were, and they said they were with the one company. That was the first we knew about anything. And doing bird surveys and this kind of thing. We have all our wildlife well documented because this is an ongoing attack on rural places that they want to industrialise them, you know. And anyway, they then put up a mast illegally, claiming Section 5 exemption, which you might get if you put a skylight in or a garage or a fence or something. But this is an 18-metre mast in a rural area where golden eagles are nesting, you know, and completely illegal during bird nesting season, of course. And we appealed it to Bord Pleanála, but we lost that, and we couldn't afford, obviously, as a community group, to take a case to the High Court, as so many can't, and around the country. But they're not sending in more brochures and through our doors, so throwing them at the door, basically. And they're planning to apply next year for the largest wind turbines in Ireland at 200 metres, and they want 1023 of them. But as you'll learn from Dublin Bay when they start their plans for that, they'll say 200 metres high and 23, and then they'll say, oh, we'll only make them 175 metres and we'll only put 19. And then local populations are supposed to be appeased by that. But this isn't renewable energy. Today in Ireland, we have 1% of our power is coming from renewable energy, which is ridiculous. So we have thousands of turbines and it's only doing 1%. So that's 99% of energy in Ireland today is being produced by fossil fuels, gas and nuclear power coming in from the north via Scotland. So there's a big debate. We think that we need a big debate in Ireland as to how we're going to generate electricity and who it's for. It's ridiculous that data centres would be using as much as a small town. And certainly here in rural Ireland, the amount of electricity being used is actually going down with immigration and that. And we don't see why we should be a sacrificial community for these American billionaires, and we won't be, and we've put them on notice to that effect.
Okay. I've heard that there is another very controversial wind farm planned in Roscommon also. Are you and the Gweebarra Conservation Group in touch with groups in other areas around the country where wind farms are also planned?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, this is how all of these anti-wind farm groups are learning so much, because, you know, we're going 20 years, so we would have looked at a lot of planning applications. Then up the road there might be a group that's only going a few months, and we share information, of course, and that's on social media too. But there has to be a national debate. People can't sit in Dublin and think that it's okay to have wind farms in Donegal so they can be in TikTok. You know, we really have to unite. I don't have my internet on all the time because I'm conscious of the fact that it means digging up a peat bog in Donegal so Facebook can say that they're carbon neutral. It's greenwashing of the highest order, and it has to stop. We need our hills and bogs, and when I say we, I mean people in Dublin that might never set foot in the Gweebarra, but that had an image, as I did myself when I lived in Dublin, off the west of Ireland, and that somewhere there's a hill, and it's ours, you know. It's Irish land. And even if people never see it, they'd like to know it's there. But with the success of governments over the last 20 years, they're determined to get rid of rural Ireland, whether it's mining, fracking gas, piping water all over the country, digging, that's all they seem to know and or seem to care about. But people now are, as I said, much more in league, and I imagine before the end of this year there will be a huge anti windfarm march on the Doyle when they finally get off their holidays.
Okay, are you happy in the group with the media and local political response to your work on this wind farm, Patricia?
Well, we were locked up, like all over Ireland, locked up for the COVID year, so there's a lot of wind farm activity. They haven't applied for planning permission yet, but they seem to be doing stuff. We were all locked into our houses, of course, and never left the door, so that was our first public meeting since all this onslaught has begun, and people are very angry. Hopefully we can have an indoor meeting the next time. But yes, I mean, that was a great programme on Seven Law on TG Cahir, and it showed some of our lovely scenery. It's a big area too, you know, and needs kind of, you would need to go crazy to see around everything. And TG Cahir only had a day, of course, to film. I was delighted to hear the local people and the local fishermen and local farmers all speaking. People know about bog landslides now. Here in Donegal, we had a huge bog landslide just back in November that has polluted a river for maybe 100 years, you know, a salmon and trout river. And I'd say the fishermen will be up in arms about it too, the anglers. They're very, very annoyed. It's terrible what's going on, and what's going on in the name of so-called renewable energy. There's nothing renewable about it when it has to be backed up by gas 24/7.
So you're saying that if this wind farm goes ahead, it's going to pretty much make you and the other people living in your area move out of the area?
It would kill us off, like torture us between noise, light, flicker, traffic. I mean, each turbine would need 1,000 tons, a minimum of 1,000 tons of concrete. The blasting, all of that. This one isn't going ahead. It's not going to happen because we refuse to be moved and we refuse to acquiesce to this and this bully boy tactics.
Okay, Patricia, you mentioned there that you expect that by the end of the year there's going to be a kind of national movement. Is there anything else to come towards the end of the interview you want to tell our listeners about what more is needed to overcome this proposal in Gweebarra and other areas?
Well, we need a national debate on energy in Ireland. The plan that is before, they're talking now about putting energy or electric generators into the North Wall. Who's that for? Who is it? You know, a lot of tech companies around the North Wall. It's not for the people anyway. That's to be sure. And as the plans come up now for Dublin Bay, they haven't done any ecology studies. They haven't done, where is the fish shoal, even what way the boats go in and out to the dock. There has been no studies, and it's replicated all around the Irish coast where they're proposing these monstrosities that in other countries are put further out at sea. But you'll have a line from Hoth to Killiney. You'll be able to see them right out the whole of Dublin Bay. And then you'll see whoever floats in, because you don't know what they're doing when they're out at sea, what digging they're doing, what they're doing to the seabed, what acoustic devices might be used to deter dolphins and porpoises and harbour seals away from these stations. So we really need a public debate, and we're not hearing it in RTE, and we're not hearing it in a lot of media, but it is on social media. We really have to decide what we're going to do in Ireland. They're going to be rolling blackouts in Dublin, and that is all. There's that most in Donegal. Rolling blackouts for about a few years before they proposed to put in the high voltage power lines. So the same thing will be happening in Dublin, and they'll say, we have to have the turbines. How are we going to get the power? And this is how all they want to do is buy and sell power. The energy companies, the wind companies, they want to turn Ireland into a giant battery. And we're not going to be part of that. And remember, everybody, even everybody sitting in Dublin, is paying for this nonsense. under ESB bill, the PSO levy, which goes straight into the pockets of the wind farm developers. They wouldn't be in this game if there were no subsidies. There would be no industrial wind turbines if they weren't subsidies. I mean, you're talking about 3 Liberty Halls high and another 50 metres, another 100 feet on top of that, or the spire on top of Liberty Hall. You know, I mean, it just gets beyond talking about, with a turning space of 747, like as if you had an airplane swinging around, and then imagine 23 of them swinging around in your house. It's so ridiculous. You wouldn't put it in a concrete jungle. You know, if you just had an old runway or something, you wouldn't put it there, never mind put it in the middle of the countryside. There's no wind here today. You wouldn't get a breeze, and that's the more and more people, they'll see that quite often there's no wind in Ireland, and then we have to keep the gas generators fired up all the time in case there's no wind or a drop in wind or a turn in the wind. You wouldn't run your house like the way these guys are trying to run our country.
Okay, I'm planning on getting in touch with the campaign group in Roscommon in a couple of weeks for Near FM as well, and I'll be doing an interview Osquelga either with yourself or one of your colleagues early next week.
No, one of my colleagues.
Okay. Okay, and I'll be. It's great talking to you, Patricia, and I'll be talking to you again on social media. And if there is a march or any kind of campaigning in Dublin at the end of the year, I hope to see you at one of the events. You know.
Oh, well, that's great.